Testing. Okay, we'd like to invite our candidates to come take their seats at the front of the room. And thank you for your patience. We've been resolving a quick technical issue. And thank you to everyone on the live stream for your patience as well. Okay, thank you, everyone. Again, thank you for your patience as we worked through a couple of logistical issues, but we're ready to get started. Thank you to everyone joining us on the live stream. We're really grateful to have your participation as well. If you have any issues with sound or audio, feel free to drop a note in the chat, and our tech team is monitoring that, and we will respond accordingly. So my name is Liz Vanderwerken. I volunteer with Mormon Women for Ethical Government. I am one of the co-leads of our Utah chapter. We are really pleased to be holding this event tonight for the 4th Congressional District, and we're grateful to have candidates with us. This event takes a different approach than kind of a traditional candidate debate. This forum is structured with a principled and nonpartisan approach that invites all in attendance to consider the candidates in this congressional race in terms of the principles and beliefs they espouse, regardless of their party. We are holding this event prior to the Republican primary election on June 28th. 3 candidates are here participating, 1 primary election candidate, Jake Hunsaker from the Republican Party, and 2 general election candidates, Darlene Walker from the Democratic Party. Darlene, oh my goodness, I have been having issues with mixing up everyone's names. Darlene McDonald from the Democratic Party and January Walker from the United Utah Party. We invited another primary election candidate, Representative Burgess Owens, and we have kept a seat for him here on the end to indicate that the invitation for him to participate has remained open. We are thrilled to have 2 wonderfully skilled moderators from Braver Angels, Erica Munson and Casey Jorgensen, who will be moderating the event tonight. This event follows a different style and different event rules than the traditional Braver Angels format, and so we just wanted to acknowledge that. Braver Angels is doing important and inspiring work, and we encourage you to check out some of their events and conversations. The moderators will briefly review the rules, and we invite in-person attendees to refer to the rules displayed on the screen and to abide by those rules this evening. The order in which the candidates will answer the questions was determined in advance by the moderators using randomized selection. And this information has not been shared with the candidates in order to provide fair treatment to all of our guests. All participants in this event are called to use the courage and confidence necessary to behave with kindness and empathy. Mormon Women for Ethical Government's Principles of Peacemaking are our organization's guide for conduct, encouraging great tolerance for people and none for injustice, ultimately claiming that peace is made possible through relationships built on persuasion, patience, and love unfeigned. We are grateful to be joined by several other organizations who have co-sponsored and collaborated on this event with MWEG. Thank you to the Gary R. Herbert Institute for Public Policy at UVU for holding this event. And thank you to Braver Angels for joining us as moderators this evening. So now we'll briefly introduce the sponsoring organizations, after which the moderators will review the rules. First, I would like to introduce Mormon Women for Ethical Government. MWEG is a faith-based, nonpartisan organization dedicated to inspiring women of faith to be ambassadors of peace who transcend partisanship and courageously advocate for ethical government. Our organization is deeply rooted in principles of ethical government and peacemaking, and all of our work circles back to these principles and is informed by our faith. For the last year, MWEG has focused on several priorities, including voting rights and protecting democracy, compassionate immigration reform, the environment and sustainability, and anti-racism and equity. You can follow us on social media, where we cover topics such as media literacy and encourage our members to take an active role in participating in government. So I would like to invite Justin Jones from the Herbert Institute to introduce his organization, and then Casey and Erica will talk a little bit about Braver Angels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Justin Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the Gary R. Herbert Institute for Public Policy. The Institute was created just last year to be a nonpartisan public policy institute here at Utah Valley University. We focus on engaging students and the community in public policy issues, and we're delighted to be partners in this event and grateful for our candidates and taking the time, as well as our partners, Mormon Women for Ethical Government and Braver Angels. So thank you so much and welcome to UVU.
Thank you. We are really honored to be partnering with MWEG in this event, and we just want to tell you a little bit about Braver Angels. Braver Angels is a nonprofit organization headed by a superb national team and powered by hundreds of volunteers in every state. We hold skill-building workshops that teach Americans how to genuinely listen to each other and work productively with their political adversaries without abandoning their principles. We're also excited about Braver Angels' latest initiative, which is called Braver Politics, which teaches politicians depolarizing skills and brings them together in conversation with their constituents and their opponents. Braver Angels is committed to liberal and conservative representation at every level of leadership. I'm the blue, or the left-leaning, Utah State co-coordinator.
And I am the red, or state co-coordinator. Apologetics. Here in Utah, our alliance has almost 400 members. We meet online and in person for social gatherings, debates, and workshops like Families and Politics, Common Ground, and the Red-Blue Workshop, all of which are offered at no cost to the participants, although donations are always welcome. Utah has also been one of the first states in the nation to hold a Braver Politics event with candidates for the Utah State House of Representatives. We have a free in-person Skills for Bridging the Divide workshop coming up on June 25th that you can register for at a table tonight, or for more information, go to braverangels.org. Thank you. And now we will review the rules. We expect candidates to commit to communicate using language devoid of bias, partisan jargon, and respect. Respond to questions with policy solutions and ideas. Avoid interruptions. Expound on potential policies. Respect the time allotted. Refrain from soliciting campaign funding during the forum. Be familiar with MWEG's principles of peacemaking. Distribute candidate materials before or after, but not during the event. And refrain from using signs, gear, or advertising during the event.
Okay, testing. This is working? Great. So for this first question, you will have 5 minutes, and you are welcome to start by introducing yourself. And we will first hear from Ms. Walker, then Mr. Hunsaker, and then Ms. McDonald. And I just want to make sure, okay, you've got a mic. Awesome. It's really up to you. What would you prefer? Would you like them to say? Is it easier to get the video if they're standing at the podium? At the lectern, right. It's a lectern.
That video over then for me, if you would. Thank you so much.
Great. So I will read the question now. Research has shown that the most effective and productive legislators are adept at working across party lines. Please share an example of an issue that you are committed to that can benefit from cross-party work, and tell us how you will encourage cross-party communication among elected officials. You have 5 minutes, Ms. Walker.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here today. I'm so excited for this forum. And just by way of introduction, my name is January Walker. I actually graduated from UVU, so I was very excited to see that it was in a place that I spent many hours. So with that, in my personal profession, I actually work in the private sector. I do cybersecurity there, and specifically in the digital identity space. So this is the ability to confirm that you are a real person and that we are interacting with you no matter where you're at, and that we are interacting with you no matter where you're at. So document verification, self-sovereign identity, decentralized identity, essentially blockchain identity in general, if we're going to just get to the basics of it. And as far as I guess why I'm wearing purple and why I always wear purple is because I left the major parties, and I wanted to signify that at the end of the day, we're not red or blue, we're all a shade of purple. And it's really important for us to come together in times like this and really consider how we want to shape our future and to pioneer forward and move that forward and stop focusing on partisan agendas and focus on people-driven agendas. And then as far as examples around things that I do to bring people together, my big thing is I care most about the people. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for. That's who we serve. And when it comes to building solutions for the people, you have to really understand what all the different points of view are and what's important to the people as well. So I did a listening campaign in 21 where I talked with over 1,000 individuals, and I built a platform based off of that feedback that they gave me. And so all of my solutions here today are driven by the feedback that I was given. And then when it comes to bringing together the two parties, the first time that I realized that there was something different about my approach to politics was when I was on a cruise with some friends, and we were having delightful discussion over breakfast, and I had a friend on one side that was very, very far left and a friend on another side that was very, very far right. And after their discussion, I wish I could remember what it was that I said, but I said something and they both said, yeah, and then they looked at each other like, what just happened? And for me, that's what we need in politics today, is individuals that can transcend party lines and bring people together and bring solutions forward for the people. So thank you so much.
Great. Mr. Hunsaker.
Good evening. My name is Jake Hunsaker, and I'm one of the two Republican primary candidates in Congressional District 4. Thank you to Mormon Women for Ethical Government. Thank you to our moderators. Thank you to the Gary Herbert Institute of Public Policy. And thank you to the viewers here in the room and online in the streaming and the Zoom call I believe we have for taking the time as constituents and as voters and as citizens of our country to vet candidates and to verse yourselves in policy positions and issues that are heavily impactful to our state and to our country. I'm a little bit about me. I'm from a family of 11 children. I grew up in western Weber County in what is still the last unincorporated area of Weber County, heavily agricultural area. My first job as a kid was milking cows. My second job was picking sweet corn in the summertime. And we grew up kind of on a diet of conservative ideals that still inform very much of who I am and very much of how I view the best path forward for our country. And those ideals are limited federal government, fiscal and financial responsibility, free trade, the rule of law, and accountability and self-reliance. And above all, civility and respect. And I think that those values are ones that you'll hear a lot about, no matter which candidate you're talking to or hearing from. But civility and respect, I think, are something that we don't really talk very much about. And they're very much the main reason, one of the main reasons that I'm running for office. Because I want a country where people come together to find the best solution for their communities. I want a country where people feel strongly about the philosophical approaches that make the most sense and that are going to get the best outcomes without taking personal attacks, without demeaning or being derogatory about people who may feel differently. And we have far too much of that in our country right now. I put myself through BYU Business School, and we had a lot more blue in the auditoriums than green in the school where I went. And I spent the last decade in the private sector building a career in Fortune 100 companies, helping people find and resolve problems through data analytics, and then helping them process manage the solutions to those problems through operations management. And those are nerdy sounding skills. They are nerdy, but they're sorely needed, I believe, in a Congress that is dysfunctional, certainly gridlocked, but also gets the problem and the symptom confused much of the time and doesn't know how to manage its solutions all the way. We call it getting the water to the end of the road. That's a farm phrase that we use, making sure that for every American out of hundreds of millions of Americans, these policies that we champion make sense and where the rubber meets the road have optimal outcomes. You know, there are a lot of very real differences between the philosophy that I think is the best path forward and the philosophy that people in other political parties think is the best path forward. And that's what makes our country great. We have an opportunity to discuss those, come together, figure out the values that are driving those philosophies, and then figure out how to bring those values together in a way that makes sense for Americans. I think about, for example, the conversation that we have here in Utah about federal lands. Now, federal lands is something that a Democrat may feel this way about and a Republican may feel this way about. But what we know is that we have shared values. And so to be specific, and I think in terms of the prompt, how can you work across the aisle on something? You know, a Democrat may not feel that state control of all of these federal lands is the right answer. I happen to feel that way. And we may not make progress on that conversation in this term or next term or overnight. But what we can do is say, listen, in Utah, we have geothermal resources, for example, right in the southern end of District 4, that are renewable resources, that are green resources, and that would build rural Utah's economy around new energy sources on federal lands. That's something that potentially Democrats in Washington would find palatable, and Republicans in Utah would also be supportive of because it would build our economy and bring us together to create an all-of-the-above energy approach that gets us, moving in a direction of greener energy without penalizing oil and gas, and while building Utah's rural economy. Those are some of the types of solutions that I think parties can partner on in a non-polarizing way. I would love to see much more of those in Washington. And those don't require a compromise in values. They require a willingness to work together, and I'm so excited to be part of one of those solutions.
Thank you. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jake and January. I want to take this time to thank Mormon Women for Ethical Government for inviting us to participate in this candidate forum, and I want to thank you to the wonderful moderators for also being here. And just like Jake said, for the people who took the time out of their day to come and be with us in person or streaming it at home. There's a story that I would like to share with you. So my foray into politics. So like Jake in January, I also have a technology background. I just happened to fall into it right out of high school, really, and just stayed with it and ended up majoring in technology in college and was able to sustain myself first as, single mom as well, and when I was married, and then as a single mom, I was able to sustain myself and my family as a single mom through my education in technology. But when you talk about the political gridlock and when you talk about the things that we can do together, Republicans and Democrats and unaffiliated, and coming together, things that are really close to home for me is like the maternity rate, and especially here in Utah, we have so many young mothers here in Utah, and making sure that we can come together and make sure that moms get the necessary resources that they need, that the young children can be born safe, and mothers can also get through her prenatal care as well as her postnatal as well. So these are things that I think are bipartisan solutions to many things that, like Jake was saying, Republicans and Democrats can come together to speak on these issues. I'm getting a little bit distracted, unfortunately, because I'm thinking about the sign that I saw walking in and when we were driving in. And what I really want to say here tonight, and what really distracted me in how to cut through that noise, and the sign that I saw as we were driving up to the college campus had, "Let's go, and I'll save the rest of it," and you know what the rest of it is. And I cannot get that out of my mind, unfortunately, as I stand here talking to you, because I want to talk to you about how we can come together as Americans, as Republicans, as Democrats, as unaffiliated voters, and cut through the noise and the things that divide us by allowing us to actually talk to each other. And I want to talk to people, even people who have a sign that says, "Let's go," which is a derogatory statement to the President of the United States. And I want to talk to the person that put that sign out there. I want to talk to them and say, what is it about me? What is it about the President of the United States that is okay to have that sign there? And how can we work together? How can we sit down in a bipartisan fashion and come up with really good solutions to really major problems? And we can't do that if we have to first walk through a sign that is a derogatory statement to the President of the United States. And that image is just branded in my mind, and I just needed to speak to that because I was hung up there. I want to be able to talk to people who literally on my social media page will say, "I can't talk to you because you have a D behind your name." But what did that have to do about the health care that we all need? Every single person that is alive today need health care. Every single person. We want to be able to retire with dignity. Every single person. I, too, worked myself through college. When my parents said, I was one of the few people that graduated from high school in my college. And I was able to do that on my own. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Hunsaker, then Ms. McDonald, then Ms. Walker. Are you committed to representative democracy? What provisions for voting access do you support in order to ensure that every American has equal access to the ballot? You each have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. Election security and election integrity is at the forefront of everyone's mind. Self-evident in the truths that all of us accept in the foundational ideas of this country is that all men are created equal, that every voice matters, and that every vote matters. And I'm an advocate for anything that reinforces that idea in our institutions, that every vote matters. And I think what's unfortunate is that our institutions, our electoral process has been threatened and called into question over the last few cycles in a way that I find fundamentally dangerous to our country. You know, I grew up in the Bush-Gore era, where a very close race in very key counties in Florida was decided by 9 people sitting on a judge's bench in Washington, D.C. And whether you believe, you know, the outcome of the 2020 election or not, whether you believe that you have facts that conflict with the mainstream narrative or not, we all have to agree with the glue that holds this country together, which is trust in our institutions. When our courts speak, when our institutions make a ruling, we have to embrace it, we have to support it, and we have to move on as a country without jeopardizing the foundational institutions of our country. And that's not Democrat or Republican, it's American. And I support things that will help Americans feel more comfortable when they cast their vote. Track My Ballot initiatives so that they can see transparently where their ballot is and whether their vote has been counted. You know, situations where Americans are left wondering if their vote matters, are dangerous to our country. And as Republicans, as Americans, as leaders, we have a responsibility to reinforce those programs for Americans so that our elections do matter and that everyone knows their vote counts.
Yes. Elections matter. Your voice, your vote matter. Your voice matters. And I am a proud Utahn. And you know what? Utah gets this right. We get this right. Our mail-in ballots and being able to sit at home, research your candidates, and mail your ballot in, whether you take it to a county drop box or drop it in the mail. Some counties actually have a return postage. And what I would like to do, I know that, so I'm a daughter of civil rights workers. I'm a daughter of, my parents lived in Alabama in the 1950s. They lived in Alabama. I grew up learning about what happened in Alabama in the 1950s and the 1960s, and it instilled in me the power and the importance of voting. And I try to educate everyone as much as I can how much their vote is their voice, and to vote. The biggest voter suppression method is to make people think that their vote does not matter. Your vote matters, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. On a federal level, when the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that sent shockwaves, because when I think about, and I've traveled to Selma, Alabama, and I've walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and we think about what happened in Selma, Alabama in 1965, people died for the right to vote, and we can come together as a country to make sure that it's easier for Americans to vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to echo what both of these other candidates have said, and I also want to introduce to you something that many people are not aware of. So when we look at voting capabilities and voter access, and the two main issues that we see is, one, how do we guarantee election integrity, and also how do we guarantee expanded voter access? And with technology, with leaning into the future in ways that Utah currently does and countries around the world do, even third world countries, is by bringing forward blockchain voting. And we compare this with technology, identity technology, that guarantees that we are interacting with this person, they are casting the vote, and when they cast their ballot, it's completely immutable. And what this does, what this means, is when you have families like mine growing up, where my parents were in the military, we would be deployed to different countries, it makes it so that you don't have to worry about mail-in ballots, because with the click of a button, you can essentially say, this is who I vote for. You have the ability to research it anywhere you are, and your ballot will be cast. And when you cast it, that's it. There's no changing it. Well, you can change it within a certain period of time, but nobody else is going to come in and adjust that vote for you. So it grants complete transparency into who actually won the election, and it makes it so that individuals, even if they're not able to get to the store, they can cast their ballots. And I just think that we are in the future, we're in the next age. We have to bring these technologies forward so that everybody can have the ability to vote. And if you want to, you can still vote in person with this technology as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's see, there we go. For this next question, we'll hear first from Ms. McDonald, then Ms. Walker, then Mr. Hunsaker. Utah's population is anticipated to grow by over 2.2 million people, or 66% by the year 2060. Our local environment faces increasing pressures on natural resources such as our air quality, water supply, and more. What solutions or investments would you propose or support at a national level to address the impacts of climate change in Utah? How will you use your platform to impact these conversations at the state level? Ms. McDonald, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is a big one. We're in the middle of a drought, and many people are very concerned about our air quality. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, that ship has sailed. The EPA is no longer giving waivers to Utah for our air quality. When we bring this issue up, it was denied for a very long time. We have something that we are braced with right now, is whether or not Utah is even going to be livable. If we lose the Great Salt Lake, if it dries, arsenic is going to be in the wind. We will not be able to live in the place this is the place. It is time. It is past time for us to take this seriously. And this is a state issue. This is us realizing we have got to get it together. We can partner with our federal delegation and type of things that we can work to. One of the things that I talk about is making sure that we can lessen our dependency on fossil fuel. Why are we still subsidizing the fossil fuel industry? Why? We are looking into the future. We have to. We are the future. The future is now. That seems so cliche, doesn't it? But we're there. This is it. We need to move forward so that we have a planet, so that we have a Utah to leave for my beautiful grandchildren, that they can live here, and this is the place. And one of the things that I definitely talk about is making sure that we have looking towards our automobiles and moving away from the fossil fuel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great points, excellent points. So when we look at Utah, two of the biggest items that people told me on my listening campaign, when I say biggest, every single person mentioned air quality and they mentioned water. And so for the last year and a half, I have been looking for solutions, not just locally, but around the world that we can bring to Utah to actually solve this problem. And when we consider where our water specifically is going, we know that it's going to farming. So how do we adjust that? There's technology in Afghanistan. It's called hydroflume tech, and essentially what it allows you to do is to use your water more efficiently, and that is exactly what we need to do. We have the technology minds. We are the tech hub of the United States with our Silicon Slopes. The second half of this problem is in our air quality. The reality is our actions impact our everyday life. And when it comes to our air quality, we have to become aggressive. It can't be this federal government always coming to save us. We can help you in a way that we say, hey, we're going to do green financing and promote businesses and companies that help that help bring green energy to Utah. But at the end of the day, it's your actions that matter. Thank you so much. That is all I wanted to share.
Thank you for the question. So really briefly, I want to highlight some of the differences up here on stage. I'm a Republican and I'm a conservative because I believe that the best answers are located closest to home. That state governments and local governments are the ones that should be the most empowered to be impactful to their communities, and that by design, this country is a country where the federal government is inherently limited in what it can do. Just constitutionally. So going back to the last question, actually, on voter suppression, election integrity, there are some things certainly that we want to make sure are in place at the federal level. But more than that, we know that elections are something that are inherently a state-level operation. And Darlene is right. Utah gets a lot of that right. And so what we want the Utah way to be the United States way. But that is not necessarily something that would imply a heavy-handed federal approach to elections. And that carries over now to the issues here on the ground in Utah. Certainly with air quality, that's not something that we would probably be able to do very much about at the federal level. But I'm a conservative because I believe in the levers of the private sector and in communities and nonprofits and families and churches to pull some of the levers that will be the most impactful in our community for air quality. I think about down at the southern end of District 4, a power plant that's has been there for 20 years, burning natural gas and emitting CO2 into the environment to provide power for Juab County and southern Utah counties. 5 years ago, a private sector company approached them and said, let's repurpose that CO2 to grow tomatoes in greenhouses so that year-round we can source locally sourced tomatoes. And that's a private sector solution. I want more of those. The second piece is the water here in Utah. It's the way we grow, the way we fight fires, our agricultural community, and that is quickly becoming an interstate national situation. And the federal government can and should, does have the purview to address that through water infrastructure, through projects, through the Department of Interior, and so forth, and I'm an advocate for those things.
Thank you. The next question will be answered by Ms. McDonald, then Mr. Hunsaker, and then Ms. Walker. It has been almost 30 years since Congress updated our immigration policies. Those 3 decades have been a period of remarkable national change, and our laws are not keeping up. Immigration policy is a federal issue. If you are elected, what do you plan to do to ensure we modernize our immigration laws and policy? You each have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. This is one of those questions. There were a couple of questions that really got to me as I was looking at this, and this is one of them. Because there's a reason why we haven't solved our immigration problem, and that is because it has become a campaign wedge issue. This is a human rights issue as well. Again, when I think about this issue, and the image that is on my mind right now is of the young 2-year-old on her father's back, drowned. And then I think about number 4 of the principles, the guiding principles of MWEG, and how we must care about each other. There's a conflict there. There's a conflict there. One of the biggest drivers of immigration is going to be climate change. That is going to be one of the biggest drivers of immigration. We have got to care about each other again. We have got to care about our neighbors again. I understand the whole concept that Republicans think that Democrats want open borders. No, I want us to actually care about our neighbors again. There's a reason why they are fleeing their country. There's a reason why. Yes, there's a legal way. There's a legal way of getting here. I understand that. but there's also asylum seekers. 2-year-olds should not be dying on the backs of their fathers, drowned. We have got to care about each other again and stop making immigration a campaign wedge issue and solve this problem.
Well, I agree with Darlene that this has become a wedge issue, in part because we focus too much on sound bites and not enough on solutions. One of the 3 pillars of my campaign is solutions over sound bites. That's something that's been with me since my very launch event that I think is really important. Now, immigration is something we do care a lot about, and as a Republican, I believe there is a right way to approach it and a wrong way to approach it. I believe in the rule of law. I believe inherent to the idea of sovereignty is the idea that you can and should reinforce your borders and can and should reinforce your laws. And we want to make sure that we do that in a humane way. We want to make sure that we don't make that a wedge extremist issue through polarizing sound bites, but we have an obligation to do that. And I think we see a failed policy at the southern border that focuses too little on the law and the order that as a country we need to uphold. Versus, just kind of the emotional component that we all know, we want to side with people at the end of the day. But those do come into conflict with one another when it comes to our southern border in some ways, and we need to uphold the law so that we can be humane about our immigration policies. But let me say this, the reason this is such a wedge issue is because it's become a popular thing to talk about the hole in our southern border and rail on it and go on Tucker Carlson or on Anderson Cooper and talk all about the problem that exists without doing anything about it. We have a whole other half of the equation that is just as problematic, and that is the bureaucratic red tape mess that is our legal immigration process. And I would love to go back to Washington and create a task force that not only talks about the southern border, which is a more polarizing issue, but also addresses the legal immigration process that's keeping people hung up, overstaying visas to the tune of millions of people, and putting down roots outside of our country after they've schooled here. And we want these people to stay in America, build American companies, and create American jobs. And we do that by streamlining our legal immigration process as the other half of that piece of pie.
Again, excellent points from the other candidates that I absolutely love that we're coming to the table and talking about this. So growing up in the military, it gave me a very spirit of adventure. I love to travel. I love to see other cultures. I am about to hit my 30th country by the end of this year. And when I go through these countries, what I see is people that say and believe that the United States is still an absolutely incredible country, even though we have our issues. That doesn't mean that we're not great. And they look to us to be an example on how to treat other people. When we look at our population, the majority of us come from backgrounds where we have parents that are from different cultures. Pretty much everybody here at some point is an immigrant. And there is no reason, period, ever, to treat another human inhumanely and to make it so that we are not coming up with solutions that bring us forward and unite us in order to solve, I guess, what I would call probably an immigration crisis overall. So we've seen that we have bureaucracy. We have many issues, and the way that we can solve that is by bringing, cutting through the red tape, completely doing a redo of our immigration system, and actually looking at where the problems are, just applying basic product management here. Take a look, see what's happening, where are your I'm spacing on the word here, but we'll move on, and then come up with a new process that we can create so that they can go home and fill it out themselves and come through legally instead of having to pile up at a border or on a plane. Thank you so much. I hope you appreciated that answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, for our next question, we'll hear from Mr. Hunsaker, then Ms. Walker, then Ms. McDonald. And the question is, how could you use your role as a member of Congress to bring civility, respect, and compassion to the conversation about education? How would you empower local educators and parents and also ensure that Utah's K-12 students receive an education that is honest, comprehensive, and inclusive? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. This, I think, question will showcase another example of my inherent belief that if something has not been enumerated as a role or a responsibility of the federal government through our founding documents, then it is an inherently state issue. And as a Republican, that leaves me in a bit of a bind because oftentimes I say, well, you know, it's not Congress's job per se. What I also want to say is that I, as a Republican, want to be more than just a party of no. No, that's not our job. No, we don't have money to spend on that. We want to be the party of no, and let's partner to find a solution, or let's partner to empower the right people to make progress on these issues. And so when it comes to education, no, I don't believe that, you know, all of the answers come from Washington. And I do believe that there are some key things that we need to make sure we get right here on the ground. One of the main priorities for me here in Utah, just as a voter, as an uncle to 75, you know, school-age kids, as a friend and a friend of many parents who want involvement and many teachers who want support, is we want to make sure our kids come out equipped with the skills that they need to compete in an increasingly global, increasingly competitive workforce. And to me, that means increased funding, increased resources for science, tech, engineering, mathematics courses, so that when our children come out of school, they can make decisions about whether they get a higher ed degree, whether they, you know, go a different route, create their own business, whether they become a coder and go work for a tech company or build their own company. Those are skills that are sorely needed in our schools, and we can use the state level education systems to make sure that our kids are getting those. And certainly, you know, the federal government standardizes that approach in many ways across our country, but those are state level ideas and solutions.
Thanks. I got kind of confused there when the mic didn't come my way. No worries. Yeah, thank you. So our education is at a crucial point. We are ranked number 27th in the world as of a few years ago. If we want to be a first world leading country, we have got to really lean in and analyze what kind of Americans and capabilities we want to be driving to tomorrow. So when we look at our students, what skills do we want them to come right out of the gate with? And when we look at our K-12 programs, they are not geared towards the needs that we have today. We need to make it so that if they can't afford college, because we know how expensive colleges become. When I first started at UVU, I think it was about $1,000. And then most recently, I feel like it was around $3,200, $3,500 after, that was about within a 10-year span, right? So it is drastically increased. And if people can't afford that, they need to be able to have the skills up front. So for me, I personally believe that we should lean into the solutions that have been brought to the table. There's been a lot of research that's been put into this to say, okay, what do we actually need to do to produce children that have the ability to fare well in the world and help us continue to be global leaders? Also, with that, when it comes to our teachers, one, culturally, we have to stop treating them rudely. Like, let's be human and kind towards each other. The second piece is they're not getting paid enough, and we have to raise how much we pay our teachers. Otherwise, we will lose out on top minds teaching top talent. Thank you.
I wish this wasn't a federal government issue. I wish we could leave this to the state. Unfortunately, it took Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 to desegregate schools. Public education is under the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, not explicitly, but public education is guaranteed to each child and is covered by the equal protection clause under the 14th Amendment. And it took Brown versus Board of Education to make that happen because the states would not allow black students and white students to be educated together in the same facility because they lived under something called the separate but equal doctrine. So some things cannot be left up to the state, and this is one of them. We do need to make education more affordable, and I'm talking about post-high school education. If public education is going to be something that is provided by the federal government, we also know that the standard now is a bachelor's degree. It's no longer a high school degree. So we need to make sure that we make the investment in our future. Investment, not spending. There's a wise man that said, show me your budget, I will show you what you value. If you value education, then that education will be in the budget. So we must put in the budget to educate our future generation, and especially here in Utah when we have Silicon Slopes and a global economy right here in our backyard. So we want to make sure that we are creating the jobs for the future and the people who can work them.
Thank you. For this last question, we will hear from Ms. Walker, then Ms. McDonald, and then Mr. Hunsaker. And you may include your closing statement in this as well. America remains a remarkable example of a nation founded on shared principles and ideas rather than identity like race, religion, or ethnicity. We enjoy a diverse citizenry, and our systems must reflect that. What skill do you bring that would allow you to be a collaborative leader who works with diverse communities? How do you plan to represent individuals whose experience might be different from your own? Again, you have 5 minutes to answer and give a closing statement.
Thank you again. When it comes to diversity, I think that this, again, comes back to having conversations. Something that I tried to do differently with my campaign is look at the languages that were spoken throughout my district and make sure that I had material that could reach them. You can find my material in Spanish, in German, and Chinese, just because I wanted to be able to represent everybody and make sure that they all felt like they could understand the message that I was trying to share and participate in that. For me, having such a diverse cultural background, I feel very strongly about this. I have grown such an appreciation for all cultures. And I think that when you understand the cultures and the people and the backgrounds in which they come from, you can make sure that you're bringing their voices to the table and that they feel like they're welcome. I think of, I wasn't planning on sharing this today, but it's something at the top of my mind. Another way to help enable people is when they reach out to you, you have to help back. It doesn't matter what their background is, what the melanin in their skin is. You have to show up and you have to be there, and we have to set aside any prejudices that we may not be aware of. I want to thank MWEG for having me here. I'm so sorry. I was very nervous at the initial part that I forgot to thank you, but thank you so much. Thank you to UVU. Thank you to everybody in the crowd. I also want to extend a special thanks to the United Utah Party that pulled me off of the independent ticket and gave me an opportunity and a platform to run and reach more people. That takes a lot when you have these no-name candidates trying to spread their message, a no-name candidate being myself, trying to spread a message of hope to the masses. And I also want to thank everybody that has been on my team that's leaned in, that's donated their time and their efforts, and every single person that's put up a sign, and every single person that's marched in a parade, or just said something, whether it's liking a tweet or sharing a message. Thank you for believing in what I'm trying to promote here. And I truly believe that the way that the United States is right now is not our future. What we are going to grow into and what we are to become is going to be so beyond any of the issues that we talk about today. We have the ability this election to stand up and say, what do we want for our future, and actually vote for it. When we look at third-party candidates such as myself, I know what they say about us, that we are a spoiler vote. But I also know that there's enough people in Utah that are moderates, that are independents, that are unaffiliated, that are not voting right now. And your vote does matter. If every single one of you voted for what you believed in, we would break out of the duopoly and we would have a true voice in Washington, because our voice would be different than what has been in the past. Thank you again so much for coming out, and I hope you have an amazing evening. Miss Walker, all right, extra time, thank you.
Ms. McDonald, sorry.
Can you raise the question one more time?
Darlene, welcome to the family.
You're wanting to hear the question again?
Yes.
Okay. America remains a remarkable example of a nation founded on shared principles and ideas rather than identities like race, religion, or ethnicity. We enjoy a diverse citizenry, and our systems must reflect that. What skill do you bring that would allow you to be a collaborative leader who works with diverse communities? How do you plan to represent individuals whose experience might be different from your own? You have 5 minutes to answer and give a closing statement.
Thank you very much. And like January, I want to thank MWEG, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, because I know I'm saying that wrong. Water Angels, there you go, for having us here, UVU as well. This was another one of those questions. Well, I found myself paused. I am a student of history. I love this country. I love my heritage. I love my family. I love my experiences. I also know that the principles of what this country was founded and where that brought my family. I was stuck on the concept of race and ethnicity because it was part of the founding principles of this country. I go to the wonderful Barbara Jordan when she gave the Nixon impeachment speech, when she said that maybe Thomas Jefferson and George Washington forgot about her when they wrote "We the People," but through the process of amendment and wars and protests and standing up, we have finally been included in "We the People." Today is Flag Day, also my sister's birthday, but today is Flag Day. And I was given a flag several years ago by my wonderful friend, Gail Blattenberger. Gail showed up at St. Augustine, Florida in 1965, a young woman in her 20s, to help tutor African Americans in segregated schools. And the home that she was in was firebombed. The KKK threw a Molotov cocktail at it. And the reason why Gail is still with us today is because the propane tank was empty. and it didn't explode. I was 1965, just 3 years before I was born. And she was given this flag for her work in civil rights, and she gifted it to me. And I've kept it in the box from which it came, because I'm just too afraid that something might happen to it. So I've been afraid to take it out. But I actually opened it today. I am reminded of the sacrifices that many people before me made to allow me to stand here and share the stage with these wonderful, absolutely wonderful young people. I'm gonna say young people who are problem solvers. We can solve partisan gridlock. We can solve the immigration issue. We have a political party that intentionally will not work with the other side because they will be primaried if they do. It's called the hashtag rule. Look it up. We have candidates who will not show up for debate because they don't have to, because of gerrymandered districts that they just know that they're going to get voted in whether they work for you or not. And they're not working for you. You have people who want to make sure that you can retire with dignity, that if you go to the hospital, you don't have to worry about $1 million bill because you got sick, or losing your home because you got sick. You have candidates who want to solve problems. But because of the gerrymandered district, you have candidates who don't have to be bothered to show up. And they work for you. If they're not working for you, if they're not talking to you. This is our moment to make change in America, and it is incumbent upon us to do so. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for a wonderful evening. Really quickly before I kind of wrap up and give you my closing statement, let me answer the question about how we solve problems for a wide variety of people, voters from a variety of backgrounds in a variety of situations. You know, one of my favorite stories from the private sector, and I come from the private sector, so I champion these stories every single day, is when Google, which is a tech company we're all very familiar with, bought YouTube. And they launched this, first of its kind platform where you could upload your own videos and share them with the world. And they launched this, on a smartphone kind of platform. And then they scratched their heads for a few weeks and months as the first users adopted this YouTube app and started uploading videos. Because a certain percentage, I think it was like 30% or something, of all the videos that were uploaded initially on YouTube were upside down. And the engineers at Google kept scratching their heads. How did this happen? What's wrong with the code? What's wrong with the app? They finally figured out that they had written the code to accommodate right-handed people, but not left-handed people. And the private sector has learned this sometimes the hard way. The government has yet to learn it very meaningfully, which is that we have a ton of people in this country, 300 some odd million people. They all come from different backgrounds, different walks of life. They live in different types of cities, large cities, small cities, some rural towns, some suburbia. And we all have the same problems translate differently, and we all have different problems. And the federal government can't solve all of those, but what it can do is acknowledge that listening to different perspectives, talking to those people doesn't hurt. It doesn't cost me any Republican talking points or credibility in order to bring Democrats into a room, and independents and unaffiliateds. This is why I'm running. Because outside even of the lines of a district, we know that the incumbent in the 4th district, with whom I'm battling in my party's primary right now, feels that it is beneath him to even earn the votes of Republicans who see the world differently than he does. That's why he failed to show up in Salt Lake to meet with Democrats during the last legislative session in January. Something that's been in place for years and years and years that's never been snubbed. He didn't show up. It's why he hasn't showed up for any more than 4 constituent town halls the entire time he's been in office. To be held accountable, to answer questions, to hear perspectives of voters across District 4. It's why he stays in office through a diet of outside funding. 80% of his money comes from outside of the state of Utah. That's one of the symptoms of a candidate, of a politician who feels it costs him some sort of Republican credibility to show up and listen to actual real people in his district. And I'm running because I want you to know, I want voters across District 4 to know that yes, I believe in conservative philosophies that will guide our country into a better version of itself. Yes, I believe strongly in limited government, fiscal responsibility, the rule of law. I believe in self-reliance and accountability and all of those things, and I'll stick to that principle and that philosophy in office. But what I believe more is that, as I started out by saying tonight, that self-evident in the truths that founded this country is the idea that your voice and my voice and all voices are created equal. And more than anything, we need someone who will show up to listen to voters, who will craft legislation in a way that accommodates a wide variety of circumstances, and who will know that their number one job is to be a voice for constituents and not a talking head, rubber stamp, late night, toxic celebrity show horse. I'm Jake Hunsaker. I'm running for Congress in District 4. I'm not my party's nominee yet, but I promise you I will show up to earn your vote if you're a Republican, and I will show up to listen to you and to accommodate your view and to bring us all together to find the best solutions for District 4 once I'm through the general election. I'd appreciate your support. Thank you again for this evening and for showing up.
Thank you so much to all the candidates. Let's give them a huge round of applause.
Okay, thank you again to the candidates, January Walker, Darlene McDonald, and Jake Hunsaker. We're thankful for the time that you've taken out of your evenings to be here. Thank you to everyone in attendance and everyone who's been on the live stream. Just as a reminder, the event was recorded and is available on Mormon Women for Ethical Government's YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. Thank you also to the many volunteers and employees behind the scene who helped coordinate this event and make it a success. We're grateful for the support of the Gary R. Herbert Institute for Public Policy at UVU, for co-sponsoring this event and for graciously providing us the use of this facility. Thank you to our amazing tech team in the back. They've been running the live stream and helping us out with that. And thank you to the Utah chapter of Braver Angels and to Erica Munson and Casey Jorgensen for doing a great job moderating the forum tonight. We're grateful for the work your organization is doing to further thoughtful and nuanced conversations on challenging issues our country faces today. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you in the future at another candidate forum. Good night.